But here's where it gets really, really interesting. And a couple of times a month, we plug into our prophecy and kind of take a deep look at what the prophecy reports may have to say. So whatever's happening in today's news doesn't have a bearing on what the Bible says will be happening tomorrow. What is the reality of this prophecy, and what are some of the big things that are really happening? As America talks about Pepsi commercials, for crying out loud, there are some real big things that are happening behind the scene. Erika Grey joins us. You can find her at BibleProphecyUpdates.com. She's also written the book Decoding 666, the Number of the Beast, and she is our guest. Erika, welcome back.
Thank you again for having me.
Last time we connected, we were talking about the Rome Treaty you were going to observe. It has a lot to do with things happening in the European Union.
Oh, yes, and I'm going to give you a report of that event.
Outstanding.
And, one of the things is that the European Union leaders actually met with the Pope. And the Pope came out with a statement in favor of European unity and wants the EU to go forward unified. So we see from that is Revelation 17, literally, and 18 just unfolding before our eyes. And the papacy was instrumental in the formation of the EU, and we see them again at this 60th anniversary, the Pope giving EU leaders his blessing. So I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, let's talk about that briefly. Why is the Pope, what did he say that would show his support? Why does it seem that he's in support of the European Union? Why does he feel that it's important?
Because the EU's principles of unity, the idea of unifying to prevent war, is in line with Catholic teachings. The idea of the brotherhood of man and the oneness of society and society being in harmony is in line with Catholic teachings.
Okay.
So this is this wine in the cup of the whore that the Bible speaks about. And it was pretty exciting because I got to listen to various EU leaders, as well as I got a few selfies with a few that are on my Facebook page, and it was really great to take part in that and to witness, and to also for the next few days experience Rome, and the Lord to really show me the full scope of Revelation 17 and 18.
Now, I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment, but I want you to know, as you're listening today, it's News and Views Thursday, and while we've been talking about some current events and some things going on in the news division in America, there are some big issues that are going on in real time, and they happen to coincide in many ways with things that the Bible talks about in differing books, like the book of Revelation. It is eerie, it's exciting, and we're taking it on with Erika Grey. How would you say then this time you experienced in Rome, dealing with the 60th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome, the European Union, the Pope giving his support of the European Union, how does that line up with Revelation 17 and 18?
Because we see the woman, the whore of Babylon, that initially rises. And we know that this is a picture of the church. And I got to also go through the Vatican and St. Peter's and the Vatican Museum. And one of the things that I didn't know about the Vatican, I always had the impression that it was always the statues of Mary and the statues of the various saints. On the contrary, the entire Vatican Museum is filled with the gods, with the statues of the gods that were filling the temples and various temples. There's Diana, there's Hercules, there's Zeus, and it truly is a picture of the depiction of this whore, this that just leads astray men against, after other gods. And so the Lord showed me that picture as well. And then at the same time, we see in Revelation 17 and 18 that the religious Babylon also has a political aspect. And in this political aspect, we see the 7 and 8 heads, which begin with the Egyptian empire, the Egyptian, the Assyrian, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greek, and then the Roman, which actually will fill 3 different slots. It filled a slot at the time of John. It filled 2 slots at the end time, because we see the Antichrist comes from the 7th head, which is at the time he receives his head wound. And it was just unbelievable that this treaty, this reorganization, this recommitment of going forward was taking place again on Capitoline Hill, which is one of the 7 hills of Rome, which we see again depicted in Revelation 17 and 18. And one of the things that they decided that they were going to do is go forward with this multi-speed Europe, meaning that if nations want to go forward ahead of other nations, those nations can. And so out of this is going to come this 10-nation core that is the EU in its final lineup.
And so this is interesting news before it makes news, and that's a lot of what prophecy is. It's news before it makes news, because after the Brexit vote, with a lot of the news that we've been seeing, a lot of folks have said, "Well, looks like the EU is dead."
And it's not. I mean, it was the march. I believe there were about 10,000 marchers there. There were riots that were threatened. The security was very high that day. We were assured that everybody taking place, that everything would be okay. I read reports that the police had actually stopped. There were sharpened metal rods, and I mean, they were ready to go. But the police were very effective, and it was really, really neat, because this march ended at the Colosseum. And
what was the march for?
The unity of Europe.
So that's what it was. That many people saying that we want to be here in support of the European Union. And this is why what we're talking about today is so important with Erika Grey. She is the woman behind Bible Prophecy Updates. You can go to BibleProphecyUpdates.com. She's the author of Decoding 666, The Number of the Beast, and she is our prophecy reporter. This is why it's so important, because as we see headlines and we think, the EU's dead or it's on its way out, what's the future going to be? The Bible's been pretty clear. It's I know there's some, if you read the Bible, you think, it's a little ambiguous, and in some ways it can be a mystery. In others, it's just boom, very, very clear. And in this, you can see that there is going to be this power, this 10-headed beast, and it's quite fascinating. We know the news before the news makes news.
Well, another thing I'd like to point out is, for years, the evangelical community has been stating that all this comes about as a conspiracy, and you have the Rothschilds and all these people for world government. Well, I was right there with the Federalists. And the Federalists they want the unity of Europe along the lines of the U.S., but Federalist ideology is also very globalist. And it's the idea that the nation state is no longer capable of taking care of the challenges that the world now presents. And when you're around all of these federalists and these globalists, they're very well-meaning. And I truly am there as an observer, and I can see their point, and I can see the anti-globalist point, but all I'm reporting on is how all of this fulfills end-time Bible prophecy. And it was really, I think another thing that I kind of took out of this is that the Antichrist is going to come in this mood in this environment, and he's going to be a deceiver. And I think that is where the emphasis needs to be, is not on that there's some kind of conspiracy. It's him who comes into the mood of the times, but he is a deceiver. And then he will come into position, and it states that even when he comes into position, he is going to deceive the people for several years, lead this thing to its pinnacle of power. Wow. And it's not until midway during the tribulation he reveals, when he's now built it up and now and uses it for his diabolical aims. And so it was really kind of neat. I brought home a Federalist flag that I was given during the it was really neat to listen. I was also shocked that I was able to get some selfies I got a selfie with Guy Verhofstadt, the chief Brexit negotiator.
Girl, you get around.
And, well, right on. You cannot do this with U.S. politicians. It's almost funny.
Yeah.
Andrew Duff.
We've got a rock star kind of mentality here in the United States. We really do. We think, we need to be separated, and as if they're the kings and we can't get near them, when really they work for us.
And in this, they're much more, but I also think it's because what's really surprising is even within the EU, because I met somebody from London, and even within the EU, many of the citizens are not aware of what's going on. So when they're holding elections, when there was the recent election for the Commission president, you had maybe 20,000, 30,000 Twitter followers to like Obama's 1 million something followers. So people really just aren't paying attention. And I think because of that, some of the bureaucrats are very personable. I was really excited when I got to ask Alan Smith. He's a member of the European Parliament for Scotland, and he spoke. And I got to ask him, will Scotland be leaving the UK? Will it, to remain? And he answered me very graciously and said it's still an unknown. We have to wait and see. And then thanked me for asking him the question, which I thought was really gracious.
That's very gracious. What an experience you had, and being part of history that's being made, but a history that we knew was in the making from biblical prophecy. It just has all of this intrigue. It has all the intrigue of a Hollywood movie.
Michelle, just as an example, let me give you this report. The Roman roads are throughout all of Rome. The Roman roads that were laid by the Roman Empire, the early Roman Empire, still are all there. Still all exist. The Catholic Church is built over, the Vatican is built over a Christian burial site, which was one of the sites where the Christians were martyred, where Caligula was martyring, where Peter was supposedly crucified. But to see the remnants still of these old, from during the time of Christ, from during the time of John, from, Paul the Apostle going to Rome, and to still see it standing. Even the Egyptian obelisks that they brought over and the Egyptian statues are still standing, and the original, all these statues and from that were filling the Roman temples that are now in the Vatican. And you're really getting that full impact of Revelation 17 and 18, but also that this Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire, in other words, the first one is still standing. Buildings are still standing, and I always had this impression of Rome that some of that was there.
No, isn't it amazing? Because you were standing in the midst of history, past, present, and future.
And what is now coming, and it was amazing, and just even the insight. For instance, in the Sistine Chapel, Baphomet, there are 12 Baphomets painted. And so I asked the guide, I'm like, why is there a goat head? Well, you know, in the Old Testament, there were goat heads. And so, you know, he painted goat heads. And I'm like, no, that's a Baphomet up there if I've ever seen a Baphomet. And there was other things that Michelangelo did as well.
It's outstanding. In the interest of time, we have to wrap up, but you'll be with us in 2 more weeks, and we will get more insight into our prophecy report. It is always so fascinating because really this is where we're at. In these reports, we're standing in the middle of past, present, and future. This is exciting. This is the stuff you don't hear on most radio shows. So it's always a pleasure. Erika, you are such a delight. You can find Erika at BibleProphecyUpdates.com, and you need to get her book, Decoding 666, The Number of the Beast. My friend Erika, you're great. And thank you so much for being part of